Yes. I skipped the title though because I'm like rushing.
Skip it.
I skipped the title.
It is streaming.
Great. Add it for me then.
Yep.
And then I'm going to share screen, right?
Yep, you're live. You're live. Okay, bye.
Bye. Wait, stop. So I'm going to hold up. Gotta get out of right to counsel, out of right to counsel.
Hello, Facebook. We're going to get started in a few minutes.
So I'm gonna share screen. Okay. Okay. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Are we good?
So there's
So everyone tuned in, just give us a second. We'll figure it out and we'll get started soon. We're excited that you're with us.
Okay, so what about now? So we're good. Can everybody see me? Gallery view. Okay, gallery view. Yes. Good. What about now? Yeah?
We can see you, Nova.
Okay. So, great. Thank you everybody for your patience. We're gonna get started in a bit. We wanna just make sure that you are paying attention to the Facebook chat. Hola a todos, pronto vamos a empezar. Queremos asegurar que todos están entrando en la cajita de Facebook para poder ver las instrucciones. Yeah, good, okay. Cool. Let me pull up the number. So we good, guys? Can I get a, Susanna, can I get a, okay, great. All right, wonderful. So I'm gonna share, bienvenido a todos. Welcome everybody. My name is Nova. I'm gonna be your MC for tonight. Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Nova. Vamos a empezar pronto. Quiero empezar con compartiendo el número para escuchar la presentación en español. ¿Sí? So I want to start by sharing the information to listen to the presentation in Spanish. Aquí en la coalición de Derecho a Abogado creamos en la justicia lenguaje o la justicia de idioma. Y por eso vamos a dar la oportunidad a todos a escuchar la presentación en su idioma preferida. Para hacer eso, tienen que llamar una conferencia, una línea de conferencia para poder escuchar el intérprete. So I'm just going to, for the Spanish speakers out there, I'm going to explain the instructions to call into the Spanish conference line where there will be an interpreter interpreting the conference, our presentation from English to Spanish. Así que paso 1 para todos que hablan en español es llamar al número 929-205-6099. Otra vez van a llamar a 929-205-6099. Después de llamar a ese número, vas a oprimir 954-096-914 y pound sign. También están compartiendo esto en la caja de Facebook. Después de eso vas a oprimir el pound sign otra vez y esperar la conexión. So for anybody who's supporting people who are connecting to the Spanish interpretation line, you're going to be dialing 929-205-6099. Then you're going to enter this number 954-096-914. You're going to press the pound sign, and then you're going to hit the pound sign again and wait to be connected. Okay. So we are also putting these instructions inside the Facebook chat so that you can read them in English and Spanish. También estamos compartiendo estas instrucciones en la caja de Facebook para poder leerlo en inglés y español. So before getting started, I'm just going to wait for the folks that we have looking at comments in the Facebook chat to let me know if everybody is good with the information to call in, so then we can get started. Great. Qué bien. Vamos a empezar. Okay. So, oops. So, hello everybody. Thank you for coming. Gracias por venir a todos. We're going to start with the presentation. So again, I have the information here to call in. If anybody needs to take another look, this is the instructions for calling in. Like I said, we believe in language justice as a right to counsel coalition. So in order for everybody to be able to participate fully in the language that they prefer, we're encouraging people to use this Spanish-only conference line where they can hear the information in Spanish. So again, welcome. This is our first virtual town hall, the Right to Counsel Coalition. So we welcome. What was that? So we welcome everybody who has joined us. Some of the community agreements that we have for tonight is be kind to one another and yourself. So in the chat box, be courteous of everybody. We're all figuring this new technology out in terms of holding virtual meetings. So it might take a little bit to get our feet wet and make it all work. We want to encourage you that if you have any questions about being able to be kind to one another and yourself. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box. And as well, for anybody who's listening in Spanish, if you have any issues understanding the interpreter or have any tech issues, again, please also utilize that in the chat box. Wonderful. So I want to bring it on to the next person. Welcome, Laura.
Sarah.
Sarah? Cool.
Yes, Sarah is next.
All right,
I was muted. Hi, everyone. This is Sarah from the Flatbush Tenant Coalition. So we just want to get started and give you a brief introduction as to who we are as the Right to Counsel. But right before we do that, we just want to see where everyone is from. So all the viewers watching, in the comments, please drop your neighborhoods, your borough, your city. If you're out of New York City, that's really great. We want to see where you're from, and then we will shout you out in a couple of minutes. And so we could, get started with the Right to Counsel and who we are. So the Right to Counsel is basically a citywide tenant organizing coalition that fought for and won low-income New Yorkers to have the right to a lawyer should they face an eviction, right? And it's not just about ensuring that tenants have attorneys, but also about building tenant power and about fighting to reclaiming our home and our city. And so we organize for an eviction-free NYC. And we do this through different methods. So we do this by targeting landlords who are the worst evictors in the city. We do this by building tenant association throughout the different buildings in the city. We create direct action groups like the Eviction Defense Network. And we do this by supporting tenants who go on strike, like we just did yesterday by releasing the rent strike toolkit for everyone who is either not able to pay their rent because they can't afford it, or for anyone who is showing solidarity to their neighbors and, making sure that we're all in this together and fighting for our right to have a home together. And at the Right to Counsel, we are also working to expand this right so that more tenants have the right to an attorney when they go to housing court, and also for more tenants to know about this right, because we've been doing this for years and we are the group who is letting tenants know that this is a right that they have because the city has not been doing a good job at doing that, right? And so you can join the movement by following us on our different platforms. So you are here on our Facebook page. We also have a Twitter page. We also have our Right to Counsel website, which has all the information that we are going to be sharing here today. And you could also join our mailing list to get plugged in into the movement. Okay, so we're ready to give a shout out to everyone. So, so we have Flatbush. What's up, Flatbush? We have Flatbush here. We have people from Hell's Kitchen. Inwood, all right, Uptown, the Bronx, all right. We have Hamilton Heights, Kingsbridge, the Bronx, all right. Brooklyn again. Okay, so this person lives in one of the buildings owned by the worst landlords. Thank you for being here. We have folks from Jackson Heights, folks from Brownsville, from Flushing. Hey, Flushing. I'm from Flushing. Crown Heights. All right. So we have like a good representation. We have the Bronx, Brooklyn, lots of Flatbush, yes. Shout out to Flatbush for being present. All right, we also want to celebrate the fact that we won this eviction moratorium, right? This is something that people didn't think was possible, and here we are. This is, the city has shut down the housing court, and we have an eviction on moratoriums for the next 90 days or until the crisis is over, really. And so this is a really big deal. And we want folks to, in the comments, if you want to share how you feel about the eviction moratorium, you could, share with emojis. You could give a short phrase as to how you feel, what this means to you, and then we could, celebrate together. Oh, we have Washington Heights here, North Brooklyn, Sugar Hill, Legal Aid Society, Forest Hills. All right. And Yonkers. And Bed-Stuy. Welcome, everyone.
So Hi, I'm Lauren. I am a tenant leader with Catholic Migration Services, and I am also an active member of the Right to Counsel New York City Coalition. So I'm going to let you know how we even won this fantastic eviction moratorium. Through an organized and collective effort, we work to ensure tenants are not evicted or forced to go to housing court during this public health crisis. Specifically, we did the following. First, we delivered a letter to Mayor de Blasio calling on him to suspend evictions and to close the housing courts. In less than a day, that letter was signed by over 100 organizations representing hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. Then over 16,000 people signed on to a petition asking Governor Andrew Cuomo to issue a statewide eviction moratorium. After that, we ran an intense social media campaign sharing posts on Twitter and Facebook and using email blasts. We put pressure on both the mayor and the governor, and it worked. Less than 1 week later, we won an eviction moratorium. So everybody just give a shout out. Just you know, that's fantastic. And what what it means is that landlords can't sue you while this moratorium is in effect. It means that housing courts in New York are closed except for emergency repairs and illegal lockouts. And it means that there are no evictions, period, until at least June 20th. Next slide. We have one of the strongest and most expansive moratoriums in the US to date. Why? Because we closed the courts. All housing courts are closed except for limited emergency exceptions, and all evictions are suspended. Landlords can't sue during this public health crisis, so there'll be no evictions. And also, there are no exceptions. All tenants are covered irrespective of the type of housing they live in, and you can't be evicted for any reason. So yay, we shout out for that too. It's fantastic.
Woo!
Woo!
This moratorium is truly momentous and historic. This is the first time in New York State history that there's been a statewide moratorium. Most places don't have a moratorium, and those that do have limitations. For example, they require tenants to prove that they don't have income. And almost everywhere, the courts are still open and landlords can sue. In short, we won because we organized. Okay, Susanna.
Thank you. Okay, Lauren. Woohoo! All right.
Yes.
So what does the eviction moratorium mean? So Lauren said some of these things, right? It means landlords cannot sue you. There are no eviction cases, and effectively courts are closed for all tenants, residential and commercial tenants. It means there's no evictions, period, for anyone in New York State. Next slide, Nova. Awesome. So if you had a case before the moratorium went into effect and you had a scheduled court date, what it means is that your court date is going to be postponed. So you'll get a notice, a postcard, or some kind of notice, depending on where you live, from the courts giving you a new date. They're adjourning cases for at least 45 days, but it depends on the court. We understand they're going to keep adjourning cases as the crisis and situation evolves. So how long will the moratorium last? It's going to be, so there were two things that happened. The state courts issued a moratorium that was indefinite until further notice, but then the governor enforced the moratorium by saying it would be at least 90 days or until June 20th. So we know that at least between now and June 20th, nobody will be evicted. We are going to be fighting for the timeline to be extended for as long as this health crisis exists, not just the public health crisis, but the economic one that's coming. So what happens when the moratorium ends? So I saw a lot of people had comments in the chat about needing a rent freeze, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But right now, if we do not win our demands to cancel rents and freeze rent, then once the moratorium lifts, housing courts will reopen, cases will be scheduled, and eviction cases can be resumed. So it's one of the things why we need, it's one of the reasons why we need people to be involved in the movement, because we're very concerned about how we emerge from the moratorium, and we don't want to see a surge of cases in court. But right now, that's what would happen when the moratorium lifts, unless we win, which we will win. We have some great hotlines here. So I think mostly we have New York City folks here. The housing court, this 212 number for New York City is staffed by a tenant advocacy group. It's not staffed by court officials, so it's staffed by folks that are advocates for tenants. So please call them. They're open every Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. They can take questions in any language. It's 212-962-4795. Okay. So so please put your questions in the chat. So I think, I'm gonna hold the questions about a rent moratorium, or what we're calling a cancel rent campaign, because we're gonna get to that a little bit later in the presentation, as well as a rent freeze. So are there any, so there's one question about, can landlords sue for back rent? Does anybody else on the call want to take that question? So I'm getting another question. So two things. So I've gotten two questions. Can people sue for back rent? And what happens if people are sued where they don't have right to counsel? So two things to know right now. So yes, just because there's an eviction moratorium, that doesn't mean that the landlord can't, once the court reopens, they can sue you for money rent you owe during this time, unless we win our demand to cancel rent. The eviction moratorium also doesn't mean that landlords can't send you letters saying that you owe rent money. So if you're like one of the millions of people across the country that can't pay rent right now, the landlord still has the right to send a letter, but he does not have the right to start a case in court. The other thing that folks should know right now is that this question about legal services. So the courts are open if folks have emergency repairs. So if you, or an illegal lockout. And in New York City, those cases are being assigned attorneys regardless of income and regardless of zip codes. So the current kind of conditions of the implementation of right to counsel are actually being suspended at this time. And anybody who has an illegal lockout case or repairs case is able to get an attorney regardless of where they live or income. Okay. Other questions? Yeah, we will definitely, so I'm getting a question about the slides. We're definitely going to be posting this video recording on Facebook after so the entire presentation is being recorded, and we'll post the video on Facebook afterwards. Yeah, most of the questions actually in here about how unfair it is to pay rent. We agree. Yesterday, we released a rent strike toolkit, and a little bit later in the presentation, we're going to talk about our campaign to cancel rent. Again, I'm getting a question about lawyers for emergency repairs. So if you have a case where you have emergency repair like heat or hot water or no gas or something that's deemed immediately hazardous, what's happening is that you can file a case, a judge reviews and decides whether or not it's an emergency in every borough, and then those cases get connected to the legal services providers.
And then also I want to add that if you do have emergency repairs, you should be submitting like an online rent reduction form on the HCR website. And we can type it in as well, because they are prioritizing emergency repairs right now at the city level. So you definitely want to submit an online rent reduction form after you've already made it clear to your landlord via letter or email or whatever that you need repairs.
So again, I'm getting this question again. Hi, Jeannie. So the courts are open to take cases for emergency repairs. And so just until this week, there was a courtroom open in every borough. So tenants could go to court and actually file, but they're actually starting this week to move to an online filing system. So if you're trying to start a case for an emergency repair, but you don't want to go to court in person, or this week they're transitioning to an online system, you really should call that 212 hotline number, and they'll give you instructions about how to do the online application in every borough. And illegal lockouts. So that's right, emergency repairs and illegal lockouts. So the amazing thing about this moratorium is that there's no exceptions for evictions. Like, no tenant can be evicted for any reason and courts are closed. The only exception is for tenants. So if you have emergency repairs or illegal lockouts, you can still access the court system. Other questions? Yeah, thank you for reposting. Somebody in the comments put the housing court answers number again. So I'm just gonna highlight it again and say that number, actually, Nova, can you go back to the slide before with the hotline numbers on it? Awesome.
Which one?
The one after? Nope. The last FAQ slide. Yeah. Just the slide right before the Q&A. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So the housing court answers hotline number is 212-962-4795. They take live, they answer questions in English, Spanish, I believe French, and they can answer any other questions through an interpretation system called Language Line. Okay, a lot. So I'm getting.
I think folks are interested in hearing about
the cancel rent campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna, I think, transition. I think we go back to Lauren a little bit to talk about. Also, a lot of folks are asking, well, I can't pay rent because of COVID-19. So it's a great way to transition to Lauren, who's going to talk about ways that you can take action.
Okay. So the question is, what do I do if I can't pay rent? Rest assured, don't worry. We won this moratorium. So while it lasts, you can't be evicted for not paying your rent. Also, you need to remember you're not alone. Millions are in the same position. They can't pay rent now either. But this buys you time. It doesn't mean you won't be obligated to pay rent later, but it does mean you don't have to worry about being taken to court or being evicted now. Which leads to the question, what if I can't pay later either? Again, you're not alone. This eviction moratorium is only the first step while we're in this crisis, but we won't always be in this crisis, and we need to prepare for what happens afterward. We need to fight to cancel rent so that the rent that's accumulated right now is never collectible, so we won't have to pay, we won't owe it now, and we won't owe it later. And the bottom line is this is a political problem requiring a political solution. So there are 4 easy things that you can do right now. Can I have the next slide? And this is a way for you to join our cancel rent campaign. the first thing you can do is you can sign our petition to the governor. We have to remember that he has all the power in New York State. He's already waived mortgages for homeowners. He needs to waive and cancel rent for tenants. So the next thing you can do is call the governor. His number, you can call him at 518-474-8390 and demand that he cancel the rent. The next thing you can do is share that you took action with us on social media. And then while you're doing that, tag 10 friends and ask them to do the same thing. And then finally, the next thing that you can do is share your story on our statewide map. There's a link here, but there's also a link on our website. The bottom line is we need to put a human face on this crisis, and we need to remind each other that we're not alone. Okay.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay. No worries. Okay, we're going to pass it on to Aga next.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi,
Thank you, Aga.
It's Aga from Flatbush Tenant Coalition. I'm just going to take a second to shout out all the Flatbush folks I know are on this Facebook stream right now. So thank you all for joining. Thank you to everyone that's joined us from all across New York City. So this is really an unprecedented time in the city and the state, and it's an unprecedented time for tenants. It's a really challenging time. It's a very challenging time for most of us, but it's also a time of incredible power for tenants, and that's because there are many, many, many of us all in the same situation, and we're all united. So it's really an opportunity to make demands based on what tenants need and what we've always known has been the right thing to happen. So Governor Cuomo is right now in a position where he can take executive action immediately, okay? He has the power, and we are demanding that he cancels rent. What does that mean? It means rent, mortgages, and utility payments that are owed or accumulated during the length of this crisis should just be canceled. And when we say canceled, we mean canceled. We mean they cannot be claimed later. People cannot be taken to housing court down the line, because the moratorium is extremely important. But we know that when that eventually is lifted, unless the governor takes this action, there are going to be hundreds of thousands of people who are, taken to housing court? It doesn't make any sense. So people need the rent canceled, and that's rent, mortgages, and utility payments. You don't owe them now, and when Governor Cuomo does this, we will not owe them now, and we will not owe them after the fact either. So I just want to remind folks, there's a petition that you can sign making this demand to cancel rent. You can see that on the bottom of the screen, and we'll also share that in the Facebook chat. There are other aspects to our demands for this cancel rent campaign. Another one of them is to freeze the rent. Many of you out there on this Facebook stream have been to those rent guidelines board hearings, right, where they decide every year how much more of tenants' income is going to be going into landlords' pockets. We demand that there is absolutely no rent increase. So in addition to the canceling of the rent, we want everybody's rent to be frozen at the current level, for there to be no increases and for no tenant to be displaced, for all tenants to have the right to renew their leases. Because right now we know that while rent stabilized tenants have a right to lease renewals, folks living in 1 to 4 family homes or other not stabilized apartments don't have that right. So we demand that right for all tenants. And the other aspect of our fight is that we are demanding that the governor and the Senate and Assembly invest $10 billion with a B dollars in homes for all, okay? We need to house the families that are currently homeless. There are over 92,000 New Yorkers across the state that are homeless. There are New Yorkers that are living in shelters, families that are living in shelters, families that are living on the streets. Everyone must be housed. There are a lot of vacant properties, especially in New York City, but all across the state. We know that when we won the strongest rent laws ever in history, the first response of many landlords was, well, we'll just warehouse apartments and we won't fix the apartments that tenants live in. So we know there are many, many, many vacant apartments. And we demand that the governor and the Assembly and Senate immediately house families in those vacant properties, whether they be public or private, and invest money in building real public housing, subsidized housing, and housing owned by nonprofits. There's a question saying, does the cancel the rent campaign require tenants to prove that they can't pay rent? Excellent question. We are fighting to cancel rent, mortgages, and utility payments across the board, okay? Because we know that there are many folks that can't show that they've lost income, even though they've lost income, right? Many folks work in a sort of informal economy. We also know the hell that is trying to prove your income or trying to prove that you don't have income. So what we are fighting for is cancel the rent period without any kind of income requirement. There's another question about what about people who are on government health programs like Section 8, where their rent is based on their income? Does anybody else on the call want to field that question? I think everybody's on mute.
Can you repeat the question, Aga?
Yes, so the question is, what about people who are on government help programs like Section 8, where their rent is based on their income? What happens with them if we're fighting to cancel rent?
Well, because we haven't won cancel rent right now, we actually aren't quite sure. There's a lot of details to still figure out, to be honest. I don't know. But okay. I did in that chat box answer people's questions about Section 8, because if they've lost income, they should immediately contact the administrative agency that administers their Section 8 to have their rents reduced. A lot of the offices are closed right now, so it's going to be delayed, but folks should keep all their records, and if they write letters, CC their elected officials. But it's a great question about cancel rents in terms of what happens to folks with subsidies, so we'll look into that.
Okay. Thank you, Susanna. So yeah, like Susanna mentioned, this is something that we are fighting for right now, right? We need this. There are going to be hundreds and thousands of families who cannot pay their rent. There already are. The New York Times the other day estimated that 40% of New York City tenants would not be able to pay April rent. And we know that across the nation, there 6.6 million people filed for unemployment. So there is a lot of us. There are many, many of us, and that puts us in a position of real power to fight and win this. Any other questions, or should I pass it on to our next presenter?
We have time for Q&A after also.
Okay. Lauren? Did we go over this, guys? Yes. Lauren, take it away. I'm going to mute you.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I got muted. Wait, I am.
Sorry, hold on, Lauren. I think we're being asked to share the Spanish number again. So I'm just going to go back.
Okay.
So that folks can call into the Spanish line so they can hear the Spanish interpretation. So it's back on the screen. You're calling the number 929-205-6099. Then you're gonna press this code, 954-096-914 #. You're gonna wait and then be prompted again to press pound, and then you should be connected. We're putting it in the chat as well in the Facebook, so please watch it there. I'm gonna say it, I'm just Felix, I'm gonna say it in Spanish also for the people who are not listening already in Spanish, que por favor, si quieren conectarse a la línea directa para escuchar el resto de la presentación en español, llaman al número 929-205-6099. Después vas a oprimir el código 954-096-914 pound, y vas a oprimir pound otra vez y esperar la conexión. Están poniendo esta información también en la cajita de chat en la página. Cool. Susanna, does it feel good?
Couple of other questions. Should I go to those questions?
Right before we move on to this call of action?
Yeah,
Okay.
just about to clarify some of the demands. So we're asking for a massive influx of funding to federal housing, to public housing. So the part of the Reclaim Our Homes platform is both to immediately house homeless folks, so in vacant housing, publicly and privately owned, but also to fund public housing as well as social housing, as well as subsidized housing. So the Reclaim Our Homes demand includes money for public housing and social housing.
And you can find out more about that on the Housing Justice for All website. So I think that maybe one of our Facebook moderators can put that in the chat as well, in case you want to go and look into the platform a little bit in more detail. And we'll also be sharing where you can sign up for more information. So as we get more information about the platform, about bills, about making it a reality, then you guys will be clued in. And also, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for your patience. I know we had to announce again the Spanish line, so thank you to the Spanish speakers for your patience. Thank you for English speakers. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. There is 188 people right now, so I just want to give a shout out to everybody. I know you can't see you all.
Yay! Yay!
You chose to be with us on this, very early evening. So thank you again.
And there's a question about what else can I do? How can I be proactive? So that's a perfect question to move us on to the call to action.
Okay, I agree, Susanna. Perfect segue. So call to action. There are 4 things that you can do. The first thing is sign our petition. And then once you do, you pledge to get others to sign on too. So I have a question. I have some questions for you. How many of you can get 5 people to sign on? Any responses, Susanna?
Oh, Kim is giving us, shaking her, like clapping. I have an ICANN. I have a muscly sign.
Okay.
Hey, Flatbush, how about Flatbush? Who's out there in Flatbush that can give us at least 5 people to sign on?
I see fist raise. I see hands raised.
Okay.
I see somebody says they're going to get their entire office to sign on.
Excellent. Excellent. Yay.
Woo!
Great.
Multiple friends have signed on. I can. I make it 10. Somebody commits to 10 people.
Okay, that's the next point. How
Somebody
many can get
commits
10?
to
How many can
5.
match that?
Somebody says most deaf. Yes.
Okay. So 10?
10, 5.
Okay.
Me and my friends. Getting a lot of
Excellent.
commitments here. I believe I can get 5.
Okay. How many can get 15?
I can, says Venice.
Okay. Thanks, Anise.
Sabrina, thank you. I can. I see Robert, 5 or
Kim
more.
has gotten her whole family.
Okay.
Yes, sign up your whole family for this.
Sugar, someone's committing to should get the whole neighborhood signed on.
Okay. Fantastic.
Dennis says he's going to get 20 more people signed on.
Okay. How many?
Go, Dennis.
20. Raise it. How many can get 50?
Somebody's committing to get their whole building, their
Okay.
tenant association. Leah says she can get 15. Somebody's already gotten 10, is going to get 5 more.
Okay.
Somebody's committing to 20.
Yay.
Awesome.
Awesome is right. No number is too small, no number is too big. Just get as many people as you can. Okay, thank you guys.
And some folks are asking to see the petition. So if you don't see it, it's the very top, like right under the call to action. It's a bit.ly that says cancel New York rent.
Should I click on it or no?
And no, it's okay. It's also on the very main page of our website. So if you're having trouble with the bit.ly for whatever reason, just go to writetoCouncilNYC.org. The petition to the governor is on the homepage.
And there's a second part to that call to action, right, Lauren?
And yeah, the next thing to do is call Governor Cuomo and tell him to cancel the rent, freeze the rent, and house the homeless. And that number, which we gave you before, we're going to repeat it, is 518-474-8390. And I'll repeat that once more. It's 518-474-8390. He needs to hear from us. Okay, next slide, Nova, please. Okay, then the next thing that we need to do is organize. And there are various ways that we can do that. First, rent strikes. If you're considering doing a rent strike, then check out our toolkit. You can text rent strike at 646-542-1920 for more resources and support. But as we mentioned earlier in this program, yesterday we released a comprehensive rent strike toolkit. It's on our website. So you should take a look at it and review it. Rent strikes are powerful, but only when they are organized. And our toolkit has a lot of really good, useful information. It includes templates for you to write a letter to your landlord, to post a sign in your building, and keep track of who's on strike, as well as more information. So I'm just gonna, just definitely check out our website on that. And then also I'm gonna tell you again, you can text rent strike to 646-542-1920. The next thing you can do is share your story. People need to hear from you. They need to know that you're being impacted and in what ways. Next thing you can do is form a tenants association. Right now is a good time to do that. We're all in the same boat. And then finally, the last thing you can do is get involved with your local tenant organizing group. Now is the time to organize. In that way, we can help ourselves, we can help our neighbors, and we can help our community, and we can truly make a difference. Okay, so if there are any more questions, feel free to ask.
So I got a couple of questions on here about the moratorium. Jeannie's asking, can we order some t-shirts that say no rent? Yes, that's a great idea. We also need to do some fundraising. So let's see, just to go back to this question about the moratorium, the current date is, yes, June 20th, and marshals have been notified that they cannot execute any outstanding orders to evict. If any marshals, and that's actually the sheriffs as well, so across New York State, they've gotten official notices that they can't carry out any evictions that were scheduled before the moratorium went into place. And there's actually a number to call. So if you go to the FAQ on our website, like if you actually just go to the main page of our website, you'll see frequently asked questions and answers about the moratorium, and that will give you the numbers to call to report any violations of marshals or court officials. Any other questions about the moratorium or actions you can take to support the cancel rent campaign?
Okay.
There's a great question about the cancellation of mortgages, or not the cancellation, I should say, the suspension of mortgages, and how do tenants find out who is the lender for their mortgages. If in New York City, if folks don't know, there's a great organization, a data tech organization called Just Fix NYC, and they have an app called Who Owns What. And if you go to that website, you can look up your building and you can find out a lot of things, how many evictions, how many violations, but also who the banks are that lend to your landlord. Can there be a short video that can explain what people can do who are able to pay, like how they can be in solidarity? And then can you talk through the information about organizing a rent strike? So those are the two questions I see. Anybody, other facilitators want to answer either of those?
The first one, can there be a short video to explain what folks can? Well, I would say that, do you have to pay? Would be my first question, because there is a 3-month moratorium right now. So really, they can't evict you right now. But I would say that there's all of the things that we've shared so far about taking action still apply to you. Just because you're able to pay the rent doesn't mean that you still can't organize a tenants association. You can still share this information, the petition, sign it, right? Share it. Call Governor Cuomo and do that as well. You can call your other local elected officials and say, like, hey, Senator, hey, Assembly member, like, can you put pressure on Cuomo? So look up your local elected officials and ask them to also put pressure. Whatever organized spaces that you're in, whether it be a church or a book club, if you guys are still connecting in some way versus like chat or calls or WhatsApp or Facebook, social media, emails, utilize whatever resources that you have and share with your community, whoever you call your community. So that's one of the biggest ways that you can show solidarity. Does somebody want to take the other question about maybe some beginning steps, I guess, about the rent strike, even though we have a rent strike toolkit out there?
Do you want to tell people, Nova, what's in the toolkit?
Oh, sure. I was going to pull it up, but I can pull it up maybe later. So in the toolkit, it's it goes through a little bit of the history of rent strikes. And as we know, or maybe not everybody knows, but rent strikes are not a new thing. They've been happening since the early 1900s here in New York. So it goes a little bit through the history. It goes through the demands right here that we've shared in terms of like the longer term goals that we have through this campaign, post moratorium and post cancellation of rent. The rent strike toolkit also has some really great tips and practices that you can use for organizing a tenants association, for how to get the word out, how to word it. There's like templates for flyers, there's templates for letters to your landlord. There, I think, is also some history of the tenant movement here in New York, so that you can also use that to encourage and inspire people to take action, because as we know, it can be really scary, right? Just because there's not an eviction moratorium doesn't mean your landlord can find creative ways to harass you, but that's not a reason to give up, because we have community in other ways that we can like lean on. So it has some of those, like what to do if these are like some issues that arise. I think, am I missing anything from the toolkit? Anybody else? Any of the other presenters want to share anything else? No, we're good.
It also gives you tools for how to just build mutual aid networks, and then also how to take action around Cuomo, right? So we know that thousands of people are going to be organizing and potentially forming rent strikes and making demands of their landlords, but we also know that we need the government to act and freeze and cancel rents for all people, not just for people that live in buildings that have rent strikes.
Mm-hmm. And then I also wanted to just encourage any of the Spanish speakers out there, if you can write the questions in Spanish in the Facebook chat. Our Facebook moderators are bilingual. I'm also reading questions right now on my phone, and I speak Spanish and read Spanish. So please do write questions there. We'll be doing a question and answer section next as well. So I just want to encourage anybody who speaks Spanish, or I think even some of our presenters speak other languages, right? So I think, right, Sarah, Haitian Creole. So I want to encourage folks, if you prefer to ask your question in a different language, throw it out there. I think somebody also asked if Adrian, if a tenant strikes, will the landlord be able to file for eviction once the moratorium is over? Does anybody want to take that question? No? Or, okay, I'll take that question. So yes, and I guess the caveat there is that if need be, we are still going to be fighting for the moratorium to continue if this health crisis continues. But yes, technically, once the moratorium is lifted and housing court is open, then a landlord can file again the paperwork to start an eviction proceeding against the tenant. So you have a couple of months though to prepare for that. So this is really good in terms of you're here on this in our presentation, and you can utilize the resources in the Right to Counsel Coalition page to be able to document anything that you need beforehand or get support from us if need be.
Can I read a few more questions, Nova?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so I have a question from one of our members here that says, does the moratorium apply to folks that live in private houses? And yes, there are no exceptions for the moratorium. So all tenants that live in every kind of housing, market rate, public housing, have a subsidy, small house, large building, all tenants, commercial and residential, cannot be evicted, period, as long as the moratorium is in place. In terms of a couple of questions about rent strikes. So I got 2 questions about rent strikes from Jason. Are there situations where we think a rent strike might not be a good idea? And then Jeannie asks about the risks that market rate tenants face. So I would say there is a couple of things to say about that. And anyone else on the call want to answer questions about rent strikes, actually?
Go for it.
No? Okay. All right. So 2 things to say about that. One is that the risk is actually what gives us power, and that we're in an incredible moment where there's a huge window of opportunity, and taking risks is something that gives us power, especially when we're doing it in a form of collective action, when our whole building does it, when we do it across neighborhoods. And so people have to assess their own risks. And actually in the toolkit, we give you a list of questions that you should ask yourself about whether or not rent strike is best for you. The risk is not the same for everybody. And so we give you a few questions to think about. Do you have a strong leadership team? Do you have the majority of people on your in your building signed up to go on rent strike? And think through other kinds of risk factors. So a building really has to decide if the rent strike is the right tactic, and it's okay if it's not, right? The toolkit is not telling everybody to go on rent strike. It's saying to folks, if you are thinking about rent strike like millions of people are, here are resources and tools to do it in the most powerful, organized way possible, and know that you're not alone, that there's a whole movement of people behind you, that we want to share your story, use it to put pressure on the state as well as pressure on your landlord. But you have to decide if you want to go on rent strike. So we're not advising whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea. We're giving you tools to decide.
Right.
Good.
We also have a comment about, like, if your landlord is still going to your door, although I'm confused as to why they would be during this COVID crisis. But if they're knocking on your door, you can very much, right, give them that notice that you lost your job or you lost income and you're unable to pay. Something that a lot of folks around the country right now are doing, are releasing template letters, encouraging people to be honest with their landlords and say, like, I need you to waive the rent for this month or for the upcoming months because I've had a loss in income, or I have no income, or I have new expenses now that I have my kids home with me and I'm scared to, like, go to the schools to pick up food, or I'm not going to the supermarket as much, or maybe I have new health expenses because I can't go to the hospital or something. So definitely utilize writing a letter, an email, and putting notice like that. What else do we have anything else?
Yeah, there's a few, I'm putting some questions in the Zoom chat. So there's a few questions about what an illegal lockout is, and the demand to fill vacant housing, does that include hotels? Anybody want to answer the illegal lockout or the demand around housing homeless people?
Let's start with the lockout one, but not.
So in New York, only a judge can evict you. So only a judge signs the order for an eviction, and then the landlord hires the marshal. So it is illegal for your landlord to change the locks or to forcibly put you on the street in any way. So if your landlord is threatening you with an eviction, if he says you need to get out in 3 days or 5 days, he does not have the legal authority to put you on the street. Any evictions have to be approved by the court system for tenants. So if your landlord is saying that, you should make sure that you are armed with the resources about the moratorium. And you only a marshal can evict with a judge's order, but during the moratorium, that is not allowed. There was a question about dorms and college students. My understanding is it might depend on the type of housing where the dorm exists, but dorms are not considered, students that live in dorms are not considered tenants. So they wouldn't go to actually housing court. So the eviction moratorium, I don't think covers them. But you should definitely call the Housing Court Answers hotline to ask a more specific question, because I've heard of some exceptions.
Okay. Susanna, can I go back to the questions around rent strikes?
Please.
So I just wanted to also just stress to folks that, you know, normally when we talk about a rent strike, right, it's a decision that we're making, that a tenant association is making, and usually we're doing it in the context of fighting for repairs or fighting to stop harassment. We're in a different situation right now, right? And there are some folks who are going to be able to pay rent, and they have to decide if it makes sense for them to stand in solidarity with the many folks who are not are going to be unable to pay rent, right? So I think just for us to remember that for many of us, this is not going to be a choice, right? And that there is a lot of us all together in this situation, and that's what gives us the power. We always say there's power in numbers, right? And whether we choose to be in those numbers or whether we fall into those numbers because of what's happening, we have a lot of people who are united by these circumstances, and we have a lot of people who want to stand in solidarity as well. So just keep that in mind. You know, when you're thinking about a rent strike for your particular building. And Nova mentioned drafting the letter. Again, try to do that collectively, right? We know that landlords, just like employers, frequently just like to pick people off one by one, right? I'll make a special deal with you, right? It's harder to talk to our neighbors right now, but if you have phone numbers, if you can put a flyer on the wall, maybe with your phone number so people can contact you, or you know, something of that sort, and then you can start talking to one another. You can do all of these things collectively so that they're not just making side deals with one or two people and everybody else is left out in the cold.
One more thing to add on the rent strikes. There's a couple of questions about, you know, the risks that folks have. And I want to, A, remind people that it's their choice, but B, remind people that we are in a different political moment. So when we think about all of the risks under the current legal framework, we have to understand that we're fighting to change the current framework, right? We at Right to Counsel have been saying we want an eviction-free NYC for years. And people said that was impossible, not legal. We now live in an eviction-free NYC. So what's possible is changing. And what's possible depends on the kind of power that we build. So the risks that you're facing or that you're worried about in terms of going on rent strike really become different if 100,000 people go on rent strike. If 1 million New Yorkers, which is actually a small percentage of all the people that live in New York, go on rent strike, the risks that we collectively face together change. So when we are doing the risk analysis, it also really depends on how much power we build. So there are also lots of other ways that you can take action to build power through all of these things that we've already talked about in terms of exactly, or you can organize a tenants association. Folks are banging pots and pans every night at 8 p.m. People are hanging white banners outside their window to show solidarity. So there's a lot you can do. And we also have this hotline to support people that are thinking about going on rent strike. And you can text this number to get information, 646-542-1920 to get information about rent strikes. There's a question about what the timeline of the campaign and when we think we might win the campaign to cancel rents. Anybody want to answer that?
I don't want to say we will know when we win. There is, I don't know if people have been paying attention to these press conferences that Governor Cuomo has been holding daily. I think there was one recently where he made a joke about his daughters like not paying rent to him because of the moratorium. Right now, right, this is still a joke to him. And so there is an urgency right now for all of us to make sure that he knows that it's not a joke. So I would say that the campaign timeline really is dependent on us and how much noise we're able to make, how much pressure we're able to put on our elected officials who have the power to cancel rent. But all of this collective power that we have, all the people who have already committed to sharing petitions and sharing this information with their neighbors, with their family and friends and loved ones, all of that, the more we talk about this, the less people will be scared. And then hopefully that pressure via social media, that pressure via calls, that pressure just with having more people talk about this and more people put pressure in their own individual ways in their buildings, right, will add to it as well. So hopefully we can do that in the next couple of days. But obviously, like, we're going to be fighting continuously, because although there are a lot of people who were not able to pay rent on April 1st this week, we know that there's going to be a lot more who are unable to pay rent on May 1st, because a lot of the people who lost their jobs at the end of the month of March may have been able to pay April, but won't be able to pay May. So all of those people are the ones that we are encouraging to also get involved. Do we have any other questions?
Dennis is reminding me that it's actually now a crime in New York for landlords to evict you, or it is a crime in New York for landlords to evict you without a court order and a marshal. Right? So if your landlord is threatening to evict you or saying he's going to throw you out, just remember that he can't. And fight and organize. Yeah. There's also this question about putting people in hotels. And yeah, that is definitely part of the Reclaim Our Homes, part of the platform. So we're calling for people to be immediately housed and also to have emergency sanitation resources to put people in hotels, definitely, and to provide funding for public housing, vouchers, etc.
So there's two questions. One, Jeannie's asking about lawyers for zip code 10032. If you're interested in doing a rent strike, then you should be texting. I think I have it here on the slide. You should be texting rent strike, those two words, to this number, 646-542-1920. Or in Spanish, you can say huelga de renta to that same number, and you will be connected with the coalition. And that way we can give you support in terms of getting connected to a pro bono attorney for your tenants association that's interested in a rent strike. And what that also will provide you with is an entire community of other tenants, right? Other people, other neighbors here across New York that are also doing rent strikes, and all of the wonderful advocates, organizers, lawyers that are supporting this work to make sure that not only do you all get support now, but you get support after COVID, and make sure that you get everything that you need to be able to win. And hopefully, right, we will, because we know when we organize, we can win.
It's also important to remind folks that part of the history that's in the toolkit reminds us that people were doing rent strikes before they were legal for generations. And many people have done rent strikes without lawyers. And the very first rent strike in New York City in 1904 was not about lack of services. In fact, the right to withhold rent for lack of services came from the tenant movement organizing. But people were doing that before it was legal. The very first rent strike in 1904 was led by immigrant Jewish women on the Lower East Side who were protesting an increase in rent. Basically before rent stabilization existed, because there was a high demand in the neighborhood. And an entire neighborhood went on rent strike, protested the rent increases, and won rent reductions, etc. So again, we're in a new moment to think differently about what's possible. Other questions?
Can we just get an amen to that, or
Amen.
or like some hearts, Lauren's here raising the roof. Like, can we? We are in a political moment where there are many possibilities, y'all. So rejoice in that, in the possibilities.
Rejoice.
Should I move us along? Do we have any other questions before? Technically, we're supposed to be doing Q&A now, so we kind of already
we're doing it.
That. So I want to see. There's a time check, 7:17. Any more questions?
There were some questions about like what happens if I sign my new lease and then we pass the rent freeze afterwards, and I don't know the answer. I would say all the reason for us to win it as soon as possible, and hopefully if we were to win it, we would definitely try to figure out how to think about that. So those are really great questions that help inform the thinking and the strategy. Thank you. Other questions?
Amy also asked, when was the last time we won rent strikes? I mean, to be honest, people are winning rent strikes in their buildings, even when it's not publicized. You know, I worked in a building in Harlem a couple of years ago that was successful in many ways. And so people are doing that every day, whether it be with a tenants association or a lawyer or not, like Susanna mentioned. A lot of folks that I know here in the Northwest Bronx, where I live, withhold rent, put their landlord on notice, and then their landlord stops the bad behavior or stops the harassment or gives them repairs, and then they start paying again. And I would call all of those successful rent strikes, whether it be individual or collective, even though we know that when it's collective, it can be a lot stronger and it can be a lot safer for many folks from harassment. What do people do about late rent fees?
Yeah.
I love this question. One, because I would like to point out that in your original lease, and hopefully people are holding on to their original leases, meaning the first lease that they had when they moved in. If it doesn't say that you have a fee, like a fee for rent, late for being late on rent, then it's harder for the landlords to like then charge you that afterwards. So like look up your original lease first and read it and see what it says. If you need help reading it for whatever reason, please also connect to a local tenant organizing group. A lot of us are working from home right now. And if you connect with us, you can send us the photo of it. You can email it to us and we can read it and get back to you.
And I would just add, it's part of the demand to cancel rent, that rent is canceled and no late fees can be charged. So if we win the demand to cancel rent, hopefully we would win that as well. And I believe we will win. We'll see. Depends on all of you. Okay.
What are some dangers in this strategy for undocumented folks? Thanks, Izzy, for pointing that out. Does anybody want to take that question? Aga, maybe? Should I mute you?
And if my lease expires and I'm month to month.
Can you speak, Aga? No.
You're asking Aga?
Yeah.
She's to mute her phone.
Aga, you have to unmute yourself. Maybe give her a moment.
All right, I'm back. All right. So there was a question about, the risks for undocumented folks, and if other people want to add to this. I just wanted to say that for housing, undocumented folks, undocumented families have the exact same rights as anybody else. You, all of the laws that apply for everybody apply for everybody, including families who are undocumented. We know that there is a lot, oftentimes, you know, folks can be scared to get involved if they're undocumented, but we also know that a lot of undocumented folks are very fearless warriors, right? So if there's any kind of particular concern that you have, like Nova has already said, reach out to your local tenant rights group. On the Right to Counsel website, there is a list of the groups that are active in the campaign, and you can reach out to them and you can speak with an organizer. You can have your questions answered. But just as a basic thing, the rights that we have around housing apply to everybody equally. Landlords try to take advantage of folks who may have, you know, different situations, but that's because they think that we don't know better, right? And once we know better and we're united, it's a lot harder for them to continue to do that.
Oh, and Aga, we have a follow-up question to that. I know we're getting more questions, but there's a follow-up question to that from Rosa. What happened to an undocumented tenant if we win the rent cancellation? Will they be able to benefit from this?
So what we are demanding is a blanket cancellation of rent, right? So what we are demanding is for rent to be canceled without anybody having to show proof of anything, right? So it's not what we are fighting for. It's for this to not be contingent on you being able to show that you've lost, you know, income or anything else. So, you know, again, we are still in the process of fighting for this, right? So all of these questions that people are asking, all of the points that people are making, you know, are going to be helpful in making sure that when we're crafting this, all of us together, that all of these considerations go into it. So we would just urge everyone to continue to stay and be a part of this fight.
And just one more thing, someone's commenting about, I referenced a rent strike in 1904 a couple of times, but just to know that there are people all over the world that have been going on rent strikes for not being able to afford homes. And remember that, you know, during a time of crisis, we were able to take over and form affordable housing and cooperatives during the 1970s. So the point is just to really remember that we're in a moment where we can demand new things. So we have new conditions. We're in a new context to demand really what we need. Weird. Okay. I think we should maybe move on to closing.
Okay, great. And we can still answer like maybe in the chat while we do that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna close us out. We have here, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's logged in. Still, I know it was a long, I think we have like 130 views right now. So a lot of you have been sticking with us, so thank you. There's a few different ways to get more information and to stay involved and stay updated. The first is to sign up for our emails. You can do that by going to www.righttocounselnyc.org. And we have it written in English and Spanish here on the slide, so that you can look at that. We also have a Twitter. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at RTCNYC. You can like us on Facebook, which you're already on our page. So there's a little thumbs up, please like us. And then you can also email us if you have a question that we haven't answered already. You can email us at info@righttocouncilnyc.org. And so we have it listed out in front of you as well. There is also a hotline that you can contact, and that number is 718-557-1379. That is the Right to Counsel hotline. So you have questions that we didn't get into, you can also follow up there. Let's see. I wanted to take a moment also to see how you all felt about this presentation. Can you give us like a thumbs up or one word phrase closing out in the comments in English and Spanish? Just share with us like what was helpful, what you enjoyed about it. Just express through the emojis how you feel about this presentation. And so we can just celebrate that we got through a virtual town hall, y'all, because it was tough. So I appreciate y'all staying with us and being patient and also reading all of those comments, because I know people were paying attention to the chat to make sure that their question was being answered. And making sure that they got the information to the Spanish hotline and even responding to each other. Y'all really stuck to the community agreements by being polite and generous and kind. So this is everything that we love about our tenants movement. I think that some people are still rolling in with some questions. So I just want to remind folks to go to our website, to www.righttocounselnyc.org, and you can get more information about the Right to Counsel law. You can get more information about tenant organizing groups. You can look up our tenant movement history timeline to read about the history. And you can also get the rent strike toolkit there as well. So definitely utilize the website for more of your questions. And then if there's still something that was unanswered, you can contact us. We are on social media answering questions as well. So you can ask questions through there. It doesn't have to be through email. Thank you.
Someone is saying that our slides were even better than Cuomo's.
Please let him know.
Love it.
Yeah, let him know.
Please let him know. And then I think we're getting a last minute question. Will there be another town hall? I think we're definitely interested in keeping up this virtual world while we're in quarantine. So if there are specific things that you want a town hall about, I'd encourage you all to share in the comment box right now some more topics, and then also through social media as well, so that we can keep that in mind and see how we can consolidate more of your questions and concerns and put them into really fun PowerPoint presentations. So I'm gonna unmute all of the presenters so that you can hear their beautiful voices, hopefully see more of their faces, and to say goodbye and hello. And I also wanted to take a shout out to our interpreters from Caracol, which is a worker cooperative that is one of our partners in ensuring that there's language justice in all of our events and meetings and workshops. So thank you to the interpreters, and thank you to the presenters. Y'all can say thank you.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. We're sending big virtual hugs. Thank you for all of your power. Much love and strength in this time.
Mucho amor.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Adiós.
you.
Adiós a todos.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Flatbush.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We're still live on Facebook.
Sure.
Hold on. That might be a second, Suzanne. I'm gonna see about
Okay.
taking us off live. Hold on. People are just gonna have to see my wonderful non-sun-kissed face right now.
Okay.
This is always the most fun part so far, like with the press conference too. That was.
Oh wait, it's here. Never mind. I remember.